Spongebob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is not good. I'm just going to be straight up and say it. I don't think this game is very good as a remake of my favorite childhood games, nor do I think it's very good on its own, and I do not understand how so many people are okay with such a mediocre experience.
Mediocre?
The original Battle for Bikini Bottom was and still is one of my favorite games ever. It's like a SpongeBob game set up in a similar style to Mario 64. That sounds like a match made in heaven, for me at least. I don't remember how young I was when I first played it, but I do remember when I got it, kind of. I got done with some kind of doctor visit when me and my dad went to a family video. You guys remember those, right? But anyway, I got that beautiful GameCube SpongeBob game, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, and Battle for Bikini Bottom. I got both of them. I had experience with the SpongeBob movie game before, which is another one of my favorites, but this one always remained my favorite SpongeBob game. And despite all those games being old licensed games, I always went back to them. They felt like they had this high quality to them that you wouldn't get out of most other licensed games. And yes, I'm saying it's about Revenge of the Flying Dutchman 2. That game definitely doesn't look real great, even for the time, and it's more simple compared to the other two, but I still have fun with that even to this day. I unfortunately do not think I can say that about Rehydrated. I heard about this game potentially getting some kind of remake while it was revealed. And it sounded pretty cool. I never thought the original game needed a remake. To me, it was damn near flawless, but at the same time, there's always parts that could use improvement. Kill Forest immediately springs to mind. The little just overall being too dark and confusing for a lot of it. I could seriously have it use a bit of a redesign. But aside from that, not much else really bothered me. I still wasn't opposed to a remake, because even if it was just the same game with the same controls, feel, and everything, but with nicer graphics, I'd still love that. Then the game was actually announced in the form of this animated trailer, where SpongeBob had the hat and the pose and the OG box art. Sure, the animation wasn't anywhere near the quality of the show, but it was still super cute and a nice way to start up the hype train for this game. It wasn't until 2 months later that we finally saw gameplay footage from a Gamescom demo. And while it had colorful new art style, it looked real unpolished. But that's not a really big deal. The game was still in a pre-alpha build, so it was far from finished. I figured my problems here would be polished up by the time the game comes out. There's also a thing that calls the shiny objects shiny things, and that is not okay in the slightest. But again, whatever. That's an easy fix, and they still should have plenty of time. As the game got closer and closer to its release date, more and more of it was shown off, and the more worried I felt about the game. The more I saw, the more little things I noticed that bothered me, but I still remained hopeful for 2 reasons. First, so the developers seemed like they really cared about the game and the community. When developing the game, they got the top speedrunner to test it out. When the community held a charity event to raise money for COVID-19 support, they actually showed up to thank them and give them their support. They didn't have to do either of those things, but I think it shows they care. The second thing that the gameplay footage just being shown for all the trailers still wasn't the final build of the game, even though it was very close to it. So I remained cautiously optimistic until the game released. During the last few days leading up to the game's release, the anticipation of whether or not it would be good was starting to kill me on the inside. Then the game somehow got sent to stores early, so some people already had the game, and were, of course, uploading all kinds of stuff of the game at that point. When I was trying to avoid seeing any sort of spoilers at that point, because the game was so close to coming out. In preparation, the day before the game came out, I played 100% of the original game again, all in one day, because I'm a crazy person. Then, June 23rd, 2020, the release date for the game. This day finally rolled around, and my Amazon pre-order wasn't there yet. Isn't that the whole point of a pre-order, is to, show up the day of? I didn't buy either of the incredibly expensive pre-order bonus editions. They came with some cool-looking statues, but a lot of it was just kind of a bunch of random junk. Like, SpongeBob socks? Okay, but why? Ivan Patrick socks? That would have at least made sense. See, those are collectible in the game. I mean, stickers? Okay. Then somehow these were either $150 if you wanted all the statues, $300. Good God, how on earth is that expensive when the base game is $30? Aside from the statues and keychains, I feel like they just threw a bunch of stuff together to try and make it way too expensive so people who are nostalgic for the original game would buy it. I guess that's just the business move. I think Purple Lamp started doing this for other remakes they were making. By the way, can I stop calling this game a remaster? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but a remaster is just the original game with some more modern changes, like high resolution or adding widescreen to an old game that didn't have it. A remake is a from the ground up recreation of the original game that can potentially change, move, or tweak things compared to the original. People use this term so willy nilly, it's just kind of annoying. Anyway, I got kind of off track, didn't I? Where was I? Alright, my pre-order still hadn't showed up. Even after like 3 days. While I was dying on the inside, not having my little Spongebob game, my dad randomly went to the store and found the game. How about that? The same guy who got me the original game also got me the remake over a decade later. I don't even know if he remembers getting me the original back in the day, but that was still really cool of him. But after all that, after anticipating this game for about first half of the summer, I finally had it. 3 days late, mind you, but better late than never. I knew the game had a day one update, and I made sure to download that before starting the game, so after waiting probably another 30 minutes, I was ready to start the game, and it was a nightmare. It was bad. It was atrocious. It was absolute the worst case scenario. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's go back a bit. I'm going through this whole damn game from start to finish because I don't want to leave any stone unturned here. I gotta get this thing off my chest. So let's just go ahead and get this started. The game opens with an opening cutscene pretty accurately recreating the original. It was a little bit insane finally seeing us on the TV. And then the game finally began. After SpongeBob gets done talking with Gary, I'm able to actually start playing, and immediately something's not right. SpongeBob's controls, what the hell happened? SpongeBob feels so much more slow and awkward. The original game had such a great flow, it had great cartoony physics and movement. This feels just so slow and not nearly as tight. SpongeBob's already kind of slow in the original, and making that worse isn't especially great in a remake when generally those are supposed to improve on the original. SpongeBob's jump feels so heavy too, when the original had a nice bouncy feel. This especially sucks because not only is this the guy we're controlling for most of the game, but this game has the same recreated level design, which oftentimes makes basic jumps slightly more obnoxious. This doesn't sound like it'd be that big a problem, but it really affects the game when what used to be basic jumps feel like you can just barely make them. Squidward's dream. Ahem. Another thing that would help with jumping is the SpongeBob's little bubble spin move in the air. It would stall you in the air for the briefest moment. It's super useful for giving yourself extra airtime. But in Rehydrated, I honestly can't tell if it does it or not. I think it does, but it just might be way less effective. SpongeBob's upward bash I always thought looked really unfinished before the game came out. I thought it looked super awkward how suddenly SpongeBob shoots up and falls down. Instead of the original, which had a nice transition of SpongeBob pushing himself up from the ground. And guess what? What I feared turned out to be the case. It feels just as stiff as I feared. Yay! But probably the dumbest decision was mapping jump to the A button. Why? Seriously, why on earth would you do that? In case you're wondering why I'm making a big deal about this, is because on the Nintendo Switch, the A button is right on the right of the face buttons. The original was on the GameCube, and A on the GameCube controller is in the middle of the face buttons. B, the smaller button right next to A does the bubble spin, and Y, which is right above the A button, does the bash. On the Switch, they have the bash on X and the spin on Y. So you have to awkwardly move your thumb across the face buttons to use SpongeBob's basic attack. It makes way more sense to have your jump in the middle, because in a platformer, you're generally going to be doing that the most and having all your other moves around it. Never did I think when anticipating this game they would move the jump button, but keep the other moves' placements on the same one. The button's layout in the other versions match the original game, no problem. What the fuck? I'll talk more about version differences later, though. For now, let's get back to the actual game. SpongeBob's beginning dialogue shows another problem: the weird lip syncing. In the original game, lip syncing was very puppet-like for the game in-game dialogue, but in Rehydrated, it tries to look more animated, but looks super strange. Their movements just kind of vaguely match what they're saying, but it never looks right to me. Even the realistic fish head has this problem. His mouth is literally like a puppet. And also his suit just kind of looks really bad now. It just looks super cheap. For whatever reason, the pictures of SpongeBob's house just kind of randomly changed. This is also the case for Squidward's house, the Rock Bottom Museum, and the Robot Sandy fight, and Squidward's dream. But I'll get back to that later. For now, let's focus on SpongeBob's house, but I gotta wonder why they changed some of these. Scott the Waz already pointed this out in his Nintendo Switch 4 years later video, but they changed this picture that used to be SpongeBob and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and it's now changed to a random frame from SpongeBob from No Weenies Allowed. It's taken from a joke where you're supposed to think that's SpongeBob, but it turns out to be someone else. It's a funny joke, but it doesn't really make any sense, so I sort of would have a picture of that in his house. This is an incredibly thing, I know, but I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I really want to make sure to talk about everything this game has to offer in this video. That being said, the only other part of SpongeBob's house I have yet to talk about is SpongeBob's closet. Why the closet, you may ask? Well, like most of the game, the design is pretty much the same. So what's there to talk about? Well, they made getting the sock in here easier. You see, in order to get it, you have to hit this button and it drops this big ball. Big ball. Anyway, you have to use said ball to jump up and push another button so you can trampoline up and grab the sock before the timer runs out. The tricky part is pushing the ball right up into the spot in order to use it to hit the button. But since the ball rolls around, getting it in the right spot can be kind of tricky. But in Rehydrated, they make a big groove in the floor for the ball to go in so it stays in place. It effectively removes almost all challenge from getting the sock. This really wouldn't be a big problem on its own, but it's just one example of this remake dumbing things down from the original game. What also doesn't help is SpongeBob repeatedly saying, "This is where I keep all my old comic books." All the damn time. This is a persistent problem throughout the whole game. Characters will not stop saying the same damn lines. This was kind of already a problem in the original game, as well as other SpongeBob games, but it was never this bad in the original. In that, and the movie game, SpongeBob and friends would say stuff, and they would repeat some lines a lot, but at least to me, they never talked too much for it to be annoying. And when they did, it was, like, charming. This game, on the other hand, just has it as bad as Truth or Square, maybe even worse. In the original game, SpongeBob would say the thing about his comic books once. One time when you enter the room, and that's it. Now let's finally move on from SpongeBob's house to the Bikini Bottom Hub world. The first thing I noticed was that everything needs to slowly render every time you enter a new area. It's so obnoxious and bad looking. Another thing that sucks is the out of bounds cutoff. There's just like a tiny drop off into the out of bounds area. It doesn't look right to me. In the original, they had a clear line dividing what the out of bounds was and what isn't. But here, I don't know, it feels like somebody new playing the game wouldn't be able to see the obvious cutoff. Aside from that, there's not a lot else to bitch about. Except for the missing gramophone and Patrick's rock, and the fact that Squidward doesn't yell at you for drawing a mustache on his painting. But again, small problems, but they still build up. How's about we go into the first level, Jellyfish Fields? Can I just say, playing this level for the first time was a fucking nightmare. I mean, it was just awful. Just a terrible way to start off the game. This was the level that they showed off the most before the game came out, and I did not expect it to be this bad. Every time you first enter the level, it gives you a cool camera pan to show you the level you're about to go through, but this just shows how terrible the draw distance this game has. This level visually tries to look impressive with the individual blades of grass, but thanks to the trash draw distance, it just looks unfinished. I'm going to skip ahead a bit because there's not much to talk about until we get to the first slide. I guess aside from this cutscene looking ugly, but to be fair, it was already kind of weird in the original. Seriously, SpongeBob, what are you doing? Now onto the slide itself. What on earth happened to the slide controls? The slides are so lame now. First off, they're so much slower than the original. They threw in these speed lines to try and make it look faster, but honestly it just looks dumb. It's way slower and easier to control, but I think it kind of is missing the point. In the original, they had their own wacky and cartoony feel to them. They were fast-paced and crazy, and that's what made them fun. This just slows them down so much that it becomes kind of boring and seriously lacks the flair they used to have. Now, let's go ahead and talk about playing as Patrick. Patrick has seen a couple of notable additions to his gameplay. Well, Patrick can now strafe while holding something. It's not ever really useful, but it's neat, I guess. He also, for whatever reason, now needs to double jump in order to stun enemies with a ground pound. I don't know why they bothered to change that, but fine. The more important thing they changed about Patrick is he can now attack in midair. In the original game, Patrick was the only one of the three playable characters that couldn't do this. Well, SpongeBob and Sandy could, but he couldn't, and I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be that way. I think most people, myself included, would say that Patrick was their least favorite of the three, but I still think he was really fun. But if I had to pick a least favorite, it'd be him. And I think most people would agree because Patrick is the least versatile. Unlike SpongeBob and Sandy, Patrick couldn't attack anything in the air unless he had something to throw at them. So you'd think letting Patrick attack things in the air would be an improvement, right? Well, Patrick's gameplay is designed to be a lot more puzzly, having plenty of sections designed around picking up and throwing things as the game goes on. I honestly don't think the game was designed for Patrick to be able to do this. Case in point, the very first time you play as Patrick in the tutorial. In the original, it's a simple tutorial on throwing things to hit buttons, something you do all the time as Patrick. The sign tells you how to throw things and how the throw fruit works. But in Rehydrated, since you can do your attack in the air, you don't really have to. This is a basic tutorial that teaches you what to do, but also lets you experiment and do it yourself. In the next part of the tutorial, they show you how to throw the throw fruit up ledges to solve more puzzles. But in Rehydrated, it automatically targets a spot on the ground you want to throw it. Because of this, you don't have to aim it in the right spot. They also do this several parts later in the game. Just completely taking out the minor challenge of actually aiming and throwing the throw fruit correctly. Instead of just automating the whole process, it seriously annoyed me when I first played this game. Like, they just dumbed this shit down. It sucks. The specific part of this level that made it the train wreck that it is the climb up Spork Mountain. This section of Jellyfish Fields was hell for my first time, and let me tell you why. I'm talking with the control issues I talked about earlier in this game. The game slows down a ton, at least in this section. When it slows down, it makes it way harder to make jumps and dodge enemy attacks. This whole section is one big climb up a mountain, and it's so easy to fall off because of shit like this. Or because of this goddamn breadstick. What you're seeing here is the common video game trope, a tilting platform. This is a very basic thing seen in several other games before and after this. In this case, it works like a seesaw. You gotta go up on the other side of the thing while the platform's tilted up. It's a simple thing in the first level of the game. And Rehydrated, guess how they fucked it up? When you go onto the end of a platform, it gives the fuck out of your jump. Your jump height gets totally fucked when you're on the end of the platform. This means when you're trying to jump on the other side, it's way more obnoxious than it should be. What ended up happening to me is that I kept falling off over and over again. Then, after falling off half the time, I get a fucking checkpoint down there and have to painfully climb all the way back up. Then, sometimes the game would lag, and it would make it so that sometimes the jump input would register. Isn't that great? meaning I'll fall back down again because I hate this game. You wanna know what else? The loading takes fucking forever. Every time you die, at least on the Nintendo Switch version, it gives you a load screen of about 20 seconds. Every fucking time. Seriously, like Sonic 06 levels of bad load times. It is goddamn ridiculous. I don't think it's as bad in the other versions of the game, but still, this couldn't have been impossible to do on the Switch, right? Also, and this is a smaller thing, wall jumping isn't as good. You kind of just, like, attach to a wall, and when you jump, it kind of just automatically, like, throws you to the next wall. You don't have to actually, like, jump and aim yourself to the next wall much at all. It doesn't really affect the game all too much, but I'd prefer it to not be as automated. After that shit show, you go and fight King Jellyfish. The fight is basically what you'd expect, except after beating him, well, just look at this. Wow, just wow. I mean, like, see what I mean when I say this game isn't polished? After one last slide, the level is basically over. Also, this is a personal thing, but I don't really like how the slides here looking all sandy. Like, I don't know, I kind of liked the slick-looking coral in the original, but it's a pretty small thing. Moving on to my favorite level in the original game, Downtown Bikini Bottom. It was such a chill level, awesome beginning part, exploring the big town area, jumping across the high-rise buildings of Sandy, the Sea Needle. Top-notch level, man, top-notch. The level here is pretty much the same, except for all the things that are wrong, silly. The first thing that's weird is that the sponge ball kind of controls better than the original, kinda. But again, this sounds like a good thing, but the thing is, the beginning section of this level has a number of bits where you need to use the sponge ball form to get across. The challenge is that if the sponge ball gets hit, he'll go out of the sponge ball form and you'll have to try again. Sponge ball also controls kind of loose, it becomes tricky to avoid damage and make it through. That's the challenge, the fact that it doesn't control the best, and it's what makes it tricky. They also let the sponge ball jump. Wait, what? Yeah, the sponge ball can jump now. In the original, if you tried to jump, you just go back to the normal SpongeBob form. You can't just let the sponge ball jump. It takes away the exciting challenge. Just like letting Patrick attack in the air, adding these moves may sound like a good idea on paper, but the game doesn't really accommodate for it, so it breaks certain sections. When you're copying the design of the original game, you can't just add things all willy-nilly without it affecting the game design. I genuinely believe Javier and the original game's developers purposely designed the SpongeBob to be unable to jump, as well as Patrick not being able to attack in midair, and Sandy doing her lasso move in the air. Oh yeah, she can do that now. While this doesn't break any sections from my memory, I really feel like the developers purposely limited Sandy so that it would add a bit more challenge trying to attack the enemies and also, I don't know if it's just me, but am I the only one who thinks this looks really weird? Like, she just shouldn't be hovering like that? I don't know. I know it's a cartoon, but it feels weird having her just, like, float there in the air to do her fucking, like, little lasso shit. Speaking of Sandy, her rope swinging feels like ass. In the original game, you'd press the button once to hook onto the Texas thingy and swing. And it had a nice feel to it, and you actually had some physics to it. It was satisfying and fun. In Rehydrated, you have to hold the button the entire time when you're swinging, while you automatically swing back and forth. There's no real flow to it, and it doesn't feel good. The original felt like it gave you so much more control. This just kind of sucks. But I think that's all of my complaints for Sandy, so yeah. What the fuck was that? Are you serious? They really fucked up Hans? How the fuck? In the original, it's just a cute thing that happens when you fall in a pit. Hans picks you up and places you back in the level. Here, most of the time this doesn't happen. Either the game just cuts to the loading screen, or you see the Hans slide on screen, and then it cuts away before he actually picks you up. Like, just wow. And this combined with the horribly long loading screens is far from ideal. That's a fucking nerfed the hell out of the Chuck robots. Like, they used to be really tough and, like, kind of predict where you were going to go, so you have to, like, predict them, like, predicting where they're gonna throw their fucking rockets at you, and here they're just kind of, they don't really bother. They're way slower, way lamer. But I guess aside from that, I don't have a ton else to talk about the downtown. I mean, it looks really unfinished when the floor breaks apart in the lighthouse section at the end of the level because it literally just disappears. It makes a breaking sound and just disappears. There's no animation for the floor breaking like in the original. Yay. That's just swell. On the other side of the coin, they added some details. So, like, there are these doodads spelling hi. That's cute. I also like that they show Spongebob library card and he talks about it. That's pretty cool. Moving on to Goo Lagoon, I realize I haven't really talked about the new art style of this game, and I honestly don't really like it all that much. I don't know. I mean, it looks so oversaturated and like everything looks like such like flat colors and like way too bright all the time. Like I don't really like it much. I think it's trying to match more with the newer SpongeBob episodes and stuff than like the older ones, but it's just too much, honestly. I really don't like how bright the sand is here. I don't know. Probably the worst thing about this level comes from the beginning section. In the first area, you have to change all the reflectors on the lifeguard towers so that they'll line up, take out the robot that stole the sunscreen. When you change the direction the light is going, it makes this noise. Except for whatever reason, it's stupidly loud. Guess what? It wasn't like that in the original. It made the same sound, but it wasn't ear-rapingly loud. But here's the kicker. For whatever reason, when you die and you load back in the level, it plays this loud-ass sound effect. I just, like... Why? Who? How? What? Aside from that, there's not much to talk about until we get into the cave. Caves are noteworthy for having this. Hey, look at that caveman SpongeBob meme from forever ago now. Yeah, for whatever reason, this game has some memes in it. Both SpongeGar here and Handsome Squidward scores house in his dream later. Because people ask for that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just don't know, and there are people who really wanted this, but like, really? I don't think most people really cared for these by the time the game came out, and especially now. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm totally out of the meme loop, but this just feels forced. Like they're really trying to look cool with the kids these days. All those crazy kids and their memes and whatnot. Just really screams, "How do you do, fellow kids?" At the same time, though, at the very least, they put it in spots that make sense and don't really conflict with the original game. Handsome Squidward pictures are in his house. That makes enough sense. There were already wacky pictures of Squidward in those places. And Goo Lagoon Caves already had SpongeBob paintings in the original. Just not this specific one, so I guess it's not that bad. It just feels dumb to me. That's about it for Goo Lagoon, though. That's about it for Goo Lagoon, I guess. Though the pier isn't too interesting, aside from the sky around it feeling weirdly abstract, I guess. I don't know. The SpongeBall pinball thing that you can't really do till later doesn't have the same, like, 8-bitty noises to it, which is disappointing, but, you know. Oh well, I guess. Moving on to the Robot Sandy boss fight, it's not awesome. I mean, it's not terrible, but they kind of made it feel way lamer than the original. First off, I'm not a fan of the redesign. I don't really know what to say. It just looks kind of bad. I wish I could say something more constructive than I just don't like it, but I just don't like it. I don't really know much about designing shit, but most of the robot redesigns I think are fine. I'm just not really a fan of this one. It's not the worst robot redesign, though. We'll get to that. Speaking of things that look bad, this cutscene, am I right? Again, just the flat, oversaturated colors really don't do it for me. I don't know. I just think these look super off to me. I'm sorry, I can't really give much better criticism than that, but I guess that's just kind of how I feel. The boss itself is just way less cool feeling. In the original, you got this towering view of the boss looking down at you, and it made it feel intimidating. And that's just kind of lost. The boss also goes by way quicker than the original. I think that was one of the things speedrunners dislike, so you have to wait for the opportunity to attack the bosses. And I mean, that's just kind of how most video game bosses work. But I don't know, it's just weird how quick this boss is. I guess this one's not really terrible, it's just kind of off. After that, we gain access to the second part of the hub world. Everything's mostly the same. The robot storming Sandy's house, floating block challenge for the extra underwear. Everything's pretty much the same, except they added these references on the TV in Shady Shoals. Kind of random, but okay. And they changed how you get the sock on the fountain? This is always a stupid, cryptic one in the original to get. You spin while standing on top of it. In Rehydrated, you have to ground pound in order to get it. I don't really know which one of these is better. They're both pretty cryptic and not obvious. This just seems like another pointless change. Why not, like, change it so that there's, like, some kind of visual indicator that you'd want to, like, spin or something, like, to, like, spin the fountain. Like, if the fountain had, like, little arrows around it or something, just, like, on it or in the ground or something. So, like, you'd be like, oh, you go around. Like, I don't know, like, something. I don't know, you could try something, and instead you like don't really, but then also change it slightly, but it doesn't really make it any better. I don't know. Next up is Rock Bottom, and most of the level is the same as you'd expect, except for the part where the game flipped upside down after doing a bungee challenge. I don't know why this happened in the museum where all the pictures changed. Some of these are honestly kind of cool looking. Rest in peace, Heavy Iron Studios picture. But the things that really suck in this level are that these tilting platforms are broken. Yeah, just like stupid breadstick Jellyfish Fields, this thing fucks your jump at the end of a platform. You know, when you'd want to jump. Ugh. The other thing is that, well, is that this level introduces sneaking as a concept into the game, with these platforms that will fall if you don't sneak across them. And the sleepy time robots who will zap you if they notice you while they're sleeping, so you have to sneak past them. Sneaking wasn't super easy though. In order to do it, you'd have to slightly tilt the analog stick like you were sneaking up on a piranha plant in Mario 64. But in Rehydrated, you can just hold ZL to sneak, totally taking out any real challenge from this. Like I said, it wasn't super hard in the original, but it was easy to mess up if you're not careful. Accidentally start walking normally when under the light of a sleepy time robot? Well, your ass just got zapped. Start walking normally while on one of these platforms? Well, you better jump because those things fall harder than a rock. There's a kind of cool risk and reward thing you had. You could have SpongeBob walk at different speeds depending on how far you tilt the stick. And so long as it's not all the way at SpongeBob's normal walking speed, you'd be fine. But then it's all the easier for you to accidentally go too fast and get hit or fall. This feels like another thing they added or changed because people might have complained about it, and it sounded like a good idea on paper, but it's really just missing the point. It just takes away the challenge from the original and replaces it with nothing. To be fair, I did defend Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, and that game has a similar sneaking button, but that was only ever used for catching the green jellyfish, and if I'm being honest, I didn't really care for it there. It was just a tad tedious. It could have been better in that game too, but I still would have preferred it if they didn't do this in Rehydrated. It just doesn't feel as natural. Instead of using your skills to overcome a challenge, it just feels like hold button when game tells you to hold button. Again, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman did this too, but at least it was only for the green jellyfish. Whereas Battle for Bikini Bottom used it more cleverly, and it kind of sucks to see that gone. The single change is far from the end of the world, but like I said, it's the small things that really add up with this game. This feels like this is really more of like a remake problem that feels just kind of disappointing than like, I don't know, it would be that big a deal if it was on its own. But again, it was kind of cleverly used before, so it just kind of sucks. Also, Mrs. Puff doesn't do her dramatic zoom in when she says this line.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
After that is the Murmelair, and this is when I tried playing the game in handheld mode. Needless to say, it wasn't great. It just ran away worse, like worse than the game already ran. It was slow and not great. The Murmelair was mostly the same though, except for how they fucked up the Bubble Bowl. I mean, this isn't a problem specific to the Murmelair, but it just shows off the problems with it well. You see, in the original game, the bubble bowl was a quick projectile SpongeBob could bowl out to things and from a distance. You could quickly turn and bowl at an enemy. But in Rehydrated, you can't just turn and launch a bubble bowl because SpongeBob always snaps back to whoever the camera's facing. So you can rotate him over to your target. Unless you have the camera turned and set up beforehand, this just takes out the nice quick fluidity the move had and makes it more annoying to use. But what really is kind of the worst thing about this move now is you see all those tiny rocks that are just kind of there for detail and you don't have any collision. Well, in Rehydrated, the bubble bowl can hit all these tiny things. You know, the ones that are everywhere. The ones that will interrupt your bowling ball and be needlessly annoying the entire game. Why? What's the point? What does this add? Was this even a deliberate design choice by developers? Or did they not even intend for this change? Because let me tell you, it doesn't make the rolling ballroom any easier. Was this meant to add challenge to the game? Well, first off, it's weird considering how most of the changes to the game were to try and make it easier, but okay. And second off, why are these rocks just in the way in areas they definitely want you to use the bubble bowl? Seriously, just right in the way, and you have to awkwardly move around these tiny obstacles. It's almost like the original game was designed so that this wouldn't be an issue, and then when you just change that but keep the same level design, it doesn't work. I really don't get these changes. If they're deliberate changes, then it makes the bubble bowl way less fun to use. And if it wasn't that, then it's just baffling how they let this happen. But that's more or less it for the Mermalair, except for the fact that Merryman looks like a wax candle. I don't know what's up with that. Sand Mountain is mostly sliding, and I already explained my problems with that, except here, look at all the fog! I mean, geez, dude, what's up with all the fog? It's seriously bad looking. I don't get this. Was it a stylistic choice? Was it done on purpose? Because it looks really bad and it makes it harder to see things coming up while sliding. The original didn't have this problem, so what's the deal? The original game also didn't sometimes kill your speed when you hit a tiki. Like, what the fuck? Come on, right over a pit at the very end of the slide? Isn't that just unfortunate? They also, again, totally missed an opportunity to actually improve upon the original game. Sand Mountain had one of the most annoying socks in the original. You have to destroy all 8 of the snowmen on the slide. Snowmen? Sandmen? Whatever. You destroy every single one of them, and you have to go down the slide multiple times to take different paths to get them all. And if you die at all, you have to start all over. This is one thing I seriously wouldn't have minded them making it easier, because it's just kind of annoying to have to redo that much of the slide if you happen to die. You have to go down the slide like 3 times just to get them all. And the slide takes a little bit to do, so if you didn't have to start all over if you die, it would be nice here. I like to challenge the original game a lot, but that part felt like too much. It was kind of annoying. Good to know your friendly neighborhood remake didn't fix this at all. Oh boy, next up is the Robot Patrick boss. My favorite boss in the original. Yeah, Rehydrated definitely made this fight worse. Like, first off, I don't dig how this guy looks. Just like with Robot Sandy, this is preference, but like, what's up with the hinge mouth? His face looks so flat, and the original looked so intimidating. And oh my god, his animations, Jesus Christ, they're terrible. He looks so stiff and slow when he's spinning around. Look at how awkwardly he gets back to the center of the arena. God, he's like practically fucking T-poses. That's fucking embarrassing. The guy disappears if you get too far away from him, which, like, come on, guys. You can't get the draw distance to be any better than that? Come on. Also, did they have to give all the goop he attacks with a little target marker? It just looks unappealing, all the red markings everywhere. It doesn't even make dodging the attack much easier. As long as you keep moving, it's honestly pretty easy to dodge it. It just fills the screen with a bunch of red, and I think it's really unnecessary. Okay, not much to say about the second phase, except for what I already said about Sandy swinging, being way more awkward than the original. And the fish announcer kept saying, "Just look at that hang time!" A lot. In the third phase, the bubble can now go over the goop, making it easier to hit Robot Patrick, when in the original you had to get close enough and line it up just right. Once again, this game is kind of taking away challenge from the original. To be a bit more positive, Lizard's Graveyard didn't really have much wrong with it. It didn't really make anything much better, but it didn't really make any segment that much worse. Well, I wish the flying ocean was transparent like in the original. I actually think this level looked pretty nice. I actually kind of think that way about pretty much all the darker levels. Like, I'm not really, like I said, I'm not really crazy about how this game's newer art style. I think everything looks like too saturated and too bright and shit. But like the darker levels honestly really benefit from this. Like Rock Bottom looked nice, and so does Kelp Forest. I think most people can agree Kelp Forest was way too dark in the original, and it could really make it hard to see sometimes. But Rehydrated actually gave it a kind of nice makeover, and the level really benefits from this. But almost nothing else has changed, which is disappointing because this is almost everybody's least favorite level. The darkness makes it hard to navigate. Getting the 3 stone tikis in this segment kind of sucks because if you die, then you have to loop all the way around the part of the level again. The entire Kelp Cave area is filled with tons of tedious back and forth. Hit a button with Spongebob, then walk all the way back so you can switch with Patrick. So you can activate a switch and then walk all the way back so you can hit another button with Spongebob. So you can walk all the way back so you can hit a button with Patrick. So you can activate another switch so you can...
You get it!
Plenty of room for improvement here. You could just put a bus stops at the Kelp Cave so that there's not as much back and forth. It would help so much just doing that. Well, yeah, it is easier to see the actual level design. The place is still not really any different, and no attempt to really help or fix anything. That is, except for the Kelp Slide. You see, the Kelp Slide is at the very end of the level, and it's the hardest slide in the original, in my opinion. So many twists and turns, and it's so easy to fall off, but it's so rewarding when you actually get to the end and beat Murray Man's time challenge. In Rehydrated, this slide is neutered beyond belief. I've already talked about the worst slide controls, but the actual design of this slide is so much worse. Any and all challenges are completely taken out, where there are once exciting twists and turns are replaced with dreadfully easy turns with slow speed. Almost the entire slide has these walls of vines preventing you from actually falling off, which was the biggest danger of the original slide. The slide was easily the best part of Kelp Forest. The difficulty added to the fun. It wasn't ruthlessly hard, and it wasn't super long. It was just hard, but sometimes overcoming a difficult obstacle is fun in a video game. Sometimes it's fun and satisfying, like it was here. It's just, you could have changed so many things to try and make Kelp Forest better, and all you do is take out the fun of the best part of the original. Just, like, why? To make it easier? You could just made an easy mode if you really wanted to do that. I think most people would agree with me that when you're little, like, games are hard. Yeah, sometimes, like, but it feels like a real, like a real moment when you actually, like, win at something, man. When you get past the part in the game that's, like, really not even that hard, but, like, you're just kind of, like, little, and you kind of just, like, are bad. And you get past it. It's like, wow, you feel like a winner. I don't know, like you could give kids something better than this. You don't just neuter the challenge of this whole thing. Again, make like an easy mode or something. You don't gotta like ruin this whole area, man. It was a fun slide. It was difficult. Honestly, I feel like most kids playing this would never even get this far anyway. If they even get to Kelp Forest, they'd probably get fucking bored and wouldn't get through the cave area. For years when I was little, I didn't know how to get through the cave area, so I didn't even know there was a slide at the very end. I eventually found out when I was little and got through it, and it was cool. It was like, whoa, I figured out this secret. That was epic. I don't know. But hang the fuck on. Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? You know, the other stuff I can kind of excuse, because at least they were SpongeBob related. This game came out in 2020, and we have a kid dabbing thinking he's so cool. Awesome. You guys want to tell me this game isn't unpolished? Well, let me tell you a story. You come gather round. And listen, it's a true story. When I first finished Kelp Forest in this game, I was gonna get the spatula for Mrs. Puff for finding all the campers, but I actually hadn't gotten them all. I talked to Mrs. Puff anyway, and I shit you not, she gave me the spatula anyway. She went through her whole dialogue like I had gotten them all, but no, I didn't. She was just giving me the spatula I didn't earn. It's not like I did a complicated glitch or anything. This is just what happened to me. I have no idea how, and I have no idea why. But it happened. And you know what I did? I said, you know what? If this game is going to be just so blatantly broken, then I don't give a shit. I'm moving on. Fuck it. And so I did. This is far from the worst thing that can happen. I've heard tons of people, including a close friend of mine, that said their save file just randomly got corrupted and was totally unsalvageable. That's just great, isn't it? All your progress just down the drain for no good reason. That's awesome. That's just fucking awesome. I have almost nothing to say about SpongeBob's Dream. I mean, they changed the skybox to a sky background. I don't prefer that. Maybe they wanted it to look more dreamlike, but I think it makes it look more generic than the SpongeBob-y, like, tiki floral pattern it used to have. But then again, that's largely preference. I really wish they added a teleport box at the beginning, so that if you miss this spatula, you can just warp back and try again. Without having to wait on the same platforms you'd already have gotten across. I wish she could have at least, like, lined up SpongeBob's dream mustache with his idle animation. The original didn't do that either, but they could have, like, you know, changed that. No? Okay. Wouldn't it be cool if SpongeBob had his, like, dreamed up mustache with the whole level? Like how the movie game had different costumes depending on the level? Yeah, I know, that's just wishful thinking. But still, that'd be cool, right? Alright, that's enough of the main levels. We're almost done here. We just need the final spatulas from Patrick and Mr. Krabs. Patrick's socks are all pretty much unchanged, you know, for 10 for one spatula. But Mr. Krabs, he'll give you a spatula after giving him enough shiny objects, and it kinda sucks. Like, it's not a bad idea, it's just that the amount that he wants gets so high that there's no way that you'd have enough shinies to get them all by the end of the game without grinding. It doesn't take that long, but these are probably some of the worst spatulas in the original because of it. But seeing as this is a remake, it's the perfect chance to make this better. Just lower the prices and it'll be fine. In Rehydrated, just guess what they do. Just guess what they did. They jacked up the prices for Mr. Krabs. Just why? These were already spatulas I don't think most people liked. Can't imagine speedrunners liked having to go out of their way to grind much if they were going to get every spatula. They're already practically required grinding to get in the original game, so why more grinding? Why do that? Like, why do that? In the game that's already way slower, and on the Switch has load time similar to Sonic 06, why do that? I can't think of any good reason. Who are they trying to please this change? I did it, though. I got every spatula for the final boss, so let's just finish this already. The final boss is pretty much what you'd expect. It's slower and easier. Especially with Robot Plankton. Seriously, he got nerfed so bad. The original, when he'd show up, you'd have just a brief moment before he started attacking. In Rehydrate, he just sits there, practically waiting for you. Like, come on, man. They also added checkpoints in the second phase, and that's disappointing. I know earlier I've been talking about places where they could have added checkpoints, but not here. Whoever made this segment epic was that it was all in one go, with no health pickups or checkpoints. Robot Plankton is difficult, but you can get him into a pattern. The segment really isn't that long. It's a mini gauntlet, but there's only like 5 or so parts to it. You don't have to redo that much when you die, but there's still pressure for you to do well or not. It'd be like if the final boss of Mario 64 had checkpoints between hits. It'd be way less epic getting the final blow. Especially when that shit was so hard for me when I was little, man. I don't know, man. I can see people disagreeing with me on this, but I felt like it was the perfect balance of feeling cool and intense without being too annoying because you have to redo a bunch of stuff you already did just to get to the part where you messed up. Also, despite the black eyes, Robot SpongeBob doesn't look as cool or creepy, and when he does his karate attack, he only says, like, the karate once when he's doing the move consecutively, which is just disappointing. I bet I've said that word a lot. After that, there's the Spongeball Arena, which, okay, I can't confirm this because I don't remember where this is from, but I swear there was an interview where the developer said that they made the Spongeball credits playable, like they weren't before. It's really weird, too. You start it, but you start in a different corner of the map than where you start in the original, but the obvious, like, start point is still there. It's almost like they awkwardly copied the level design from the original without thinking about how it would actually work. Or it was just really rushed, I don't know. Or both, you know, whatever's possible. Man, I don't know who to blame, but this game feels so rushed and unfinished. I know it's 2020, but if there are problems and the game isn't done, then delay the game. It's probably just Nickelodeon who didn't care and wanted the game out when they wanted it out. But I honestly doubt that if there wasn't any corona, pandemic-y, you know what, this game would have been much better. The pre-alpha footage was from 2019, and it doesn't really look much different from the final game. Maybe they really wanted to polish it more, and the fact that it looks so much like an unfinished pre-alpha build just shows how unfinished it is. I don't know, but because I really don't want to assume the worst out of the developers. Like I said, they seemed like they were really nice, and they were really cool with the community, but at the same time, there were really times when playing this game I wondered if they actually played the original game to know how it felt, and how it was designed when they made this remake, because sometimes it really didn't feel like it. At times it felt like they just saw footage of the original game and just assumed how it played. I know it's an incredibly pessimistic thing to say, but then again, why is Sandy's rope swinging the way it is? Why can Patrick attack in the air? Did they know that he couldn't, or did they see the original and just assume he could while copying the original level design? Why can SpongeBob bash after doing a jump? Why does using the bubble bowl snap SpongeBob where the camera's facing? And why does it get stuck on the little rocks? Why is the cruise bubble not inverted vertically? Why do you not start at the start point in the Spongeball Arena? Why can the Spongebob jump? Did they see it bounce around and just assume, well, why couldn't it jump? I'm sorry, but it just kind of explains some of these design choices to me. I don't like to think this because they seem so nice with the community, and I don't want to think that they were just lazy or what. I don't know, I can't deny how I felt. That's about everything in the main game to talk about except for the movie theater. In the original, that place required a whopping 4,000 shinies in order to let you see some concept art for the game. I mean, yeah, 4,000 is kind of way too much, but I think it's still a cool reward. What does Rehydrated do? Well, the ludicrous price is still the same, of course. But what does the movie theater exactly show? Drum roll, please. It shows 6 random screenshots. That's it. Nothing new, not even anything actually cool, just 6 dumb screenshots. It literally would have been better if they just kept the same concept art the original had. I cannot believe how lame that shit is. Like, my god. Now, I do know that this and a number of things have actually been patched, including the stupid breadstick working how it should. The fog is a lot better than Sand Mountain. Mr. Krabs' prices are not as high, even though they're still higher than the original. And now the museum has concept art for Rehydrated in it. Well, that's all good and all, but this type of stuff really bothers me. It doesn't matter if you release a game and it's shit, you can just patch it out later. I feel like the longevity of your game, you know? This type of stuff just really bothers me. Like, something I love about older games is if you just find some little game in Goodwill or something, well, that's it. That's the whole game right there. Like, years later when the Switch is like 15, 20 years older, you're not going to be able to download these patches. You're going to be stuck with the game as is. That's why I don't like game devs just fixing shit later. Because it's far from a permanent fix. You just like slapped a band-aid on it and you didn't really fix the problem. The game already came out. You already fucked up. I'm fine if it's just little bug fixes, or if it just makes the game run a little smoother. But the game I bought should be perfectly fine out of the box. You shouldn't need to download extra crap just to get your game to work. Also, updates like this can take a ton of storage, especially on the Switch. I seriously had to delete the update data for this game because I needed to make room for other games on my Switch. Unless you have like extra SD cards, this could be a really annoying problem. But even then, you'd be getting outside material just to get a game to work better. And might I remind you, this is a remake of a game from 2003. There's no excuse for this. Even then, this still doesn't play very well on the Switch, even after multiple updates. It's ridiculous. The whole update thing, I feel, is probably more of a me problem than it is for most people. I feel like most people don't care, but that's just part of why I like physical games. I always get games physically unless I can't, and it feels like it kind of defeats the purpose of that when you need to download parts of the game anyway. I like the entire game to be on one physical disc or cartridge or whatever, because I know that it'll always last. This really shouldn't be a problem for a decade-old game, but here we are. This is just a modern game practice I really don't like. Like, they'll announce a game, and then before it's out, announce that you'll get free updates for it later. It just makes me think, like, so is the game not finished now, so you're gonna finish it later? Even if the updates are free, I still don't like it. A game should be complete when you buy it, and then when the whole game isn't physically on there, it bothers me. Even in Smash Bros.'s case, where it still feels like a full-price game, they're still announcing new DLC characters like 3 years later. But after the Switch eShop goes down, because eventually it will, you're never going to be able to download that stuff again. Smash Ultimate has like 1 million DLC characters. And what if years later you found a copy of it, or like a thrift store or something? You're going to miss out on content that you know exists. I say all this, I'm really not a big Smash fan at all. Fighting games really just aren't my thing. But still, this is the stuff that doesn't last, and it's really unfortunate. And even despite all this, I still made sure that I downloaded the day one patch for the game before I had started playing it, and I still experienced all this. Jeez. You know what this game really reminds me of? I'm being totally honest here. This game reminds me of Sonic 06. That's quite a statement considering that game's reputation, but hear me out. Both games at their core have some really cool design, but stiff controls and glitchy movement and collision kinda ruin the whole thing. The only difference is this is a remake and 06 isn't. Yeah, I think 06 has some really cool level design and ideas, but it gets overshadowed by all the 06-iness. Rehydrated feels the same way because the game design is copied almost exactly from the original game. In fact, I kind of think that's the only thing saving this game from being absolutely terrible. The fact that it uses a great games engine at its core, but everything else sucks. That's why I've been calling it mediocre so much, because it really is. A great game design and ideas combined with controls and feel equals a mediocre experience overall. Do you know how much that sucks? Do you know how much that bites? This game got the status of overcoming all the shitty trappings of most licensed games and managed to be great is now seen as mediocre by pretty much all professional game critics. Pretty much all professional game critics people might look at for game reviews didn't like this game all that much, if at all. Even GameXplain gave it a bad score, which I'm kind of happy about, because honestly, I don't think this game is worth most people's time. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that this was part of the point of the remake, was to get people to know about it. To get people to see how great it is. But frankly, this remake doesn't do it justice at all. People who play this just see this mediocre experience and pass it off as just another dumb license game. It's just so sad to me. I know user score has been much higher, and it is truly great that people still enjoy this game. But it really sucks to see this happen to this game's reputation. How often does this happen where a licensed game gets fully remade like this? Like, basically never, right? This was its chance to get more recognition to general gamers, and you blew it. You took its one chance at happiness and crushed it. Crushed it into little tiny bite-sized pieces. I really expected more from you people. But I guess I'm a loser for that too. It probably would have never been as renounced as other games from the time, but more recognition for it would have been great. But no, we're probably never going to see that. This is probably all the game's ever going to get. People were hyped when this game came out last year, but now does anybody really talk about it? It just came and went. No lasting thoughts, just meh feelings, and that really sucks. It wanted to get recognized, it wanted to be appreciated more, and now it's faded from public memory, and it's gonna crawl back to its forgotten hole because of this rushed and lazy remake. Maybe I'm wrong about this. More people care about it than I realize, but it just doesn't really seem that way. I don't even know if the fan base cares that much for it. Like, was it just like an initial novelty for a while? Have people just gone back to playing the original? Do people still really care? I'm genuinely curious. But go like tell me how you feel in the comments if you want. But I mean, I don't know. It just seems like most people stopped really caring when I feel like if this game was like, you know, as polished and well done as the original, it would have gotten more appreciation and people would have cared about it more. But I mean, that's kind of just a what if, I guess. Well, you know, because we'll never really know. Are we done here? What's up to talk about? The multiplayer mode? Okay, I guess. Well, it's super boring. You literally just go around and fight a bunch of robots until you die, I guess. I don't know. I did it with my sister once, and we got really bored really quickly. It just feels like they just threw this in either to say they added something new, or so they could say they added beta content from the original game in this game. Which they did say, but they were just referring to this new mode. They were so proud they added Robot Squidward, something planned from the original game at some point, as there's concept art for it in the movie theater in the original. It was even in the GBA version. But guess what? You don't even fight him. He just sits there, and when you get through a round of robots, he loses a tentacle. I guess when he loses all of them, the mode ends? I don't know. I don't care. But man, isn't that lame? There are even parts of Robot SpongeBob's anchor arms he's going to use in a cut phase of the final boss. They even made little bits like the cut area for Patrick's dream, but it doesn't really matter. They're just like platforms. Robot Squidward doesn't do shit. Why not actually try to add these elements into the actual game instead of doing this boring and unnecessary side mode? This mode starts, tempts you with Robot Squidward, and it doesn't even matter. I guess it's kind of cool that you can play as different characters, even though it doesn't really matter all that much. I mean, like, some of them have like a swing move, and some of them have like a projectile move, and isn't the projectile kind of better? I don't know how balanced that is, but still kind of neat, I guess. Why is the rock bottom theme on loop? That's such an odd choice. I think they changed it later to something else in an update, but I don't really know. It's just kind of random. Well, I guess that's it. This video is probably going to end up being pretty long, but oh well. I wanted to get my thoughts out there, and this game's 1 year anniversary seemed like the perfect time to do it. Like I said, I didn't really enjoy this game all that much, but that doesn't mean you can't. Honestly, all the power to you if you can. I didn't want to feel this way about this game, but I wanted to be honest, and that's what I did. Hopefully this video turned out well. This is something I've wanted to make for a real long time now, and hopefully this video is something I can be proud of. Well, I'll see you guys next time, I guess. Bye-bye.